Yes, welcome here, Peter. You're the CEO of InDex Pharmaceuticals. We're looking forward to a short presentation, and as I said, I'll flip you through if you let me know when you want me to shift. But the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity to present here today. My name is Peter Sehuni. I'm the CEO of InDex Pharmaceuticals. So if you switch the slide, we have our standard disclaimer for forward-looking statements. So InDex, we are a biotech company that is developing a drug to be able to help patients like Felicia here with ulcerative colitis to live a normal life. If you switch to the next one. Our lead drug candidate is called cobitolimod, and we're just about to start phase 3 with that. And phase 3 is the last stage of development before you can apply for marketing approval for a drug. So we've come a long way. Apart from cobitolimod, we have a broad portfolio of chemically similar substances. We call them DIMS from our DIMS platform. These are little pieces of DNA that we can use to steer the immune system via something called toll-like receptor 9, which gives this broad application in different immunological diseases. But they are much earlier stage than cobitolimod, so today we focus on cobitolimod. We are listed in Stockholm on the First North growth market. Actually, next week we celebrate our 5-year anniversary as a listed company. And our current market cap is around 800 million Swedish. Earlier this year, we raised more than 500 million Swedish crowns to fund the phase 3 development. And at the same time, we strengthened our shareholder base. So the current owners or main owners are Link. This is the investment vehicle of a Swedish life science investor called Bengt Jolander, very successful. So they have 13% of the company. Then we also have the fourth national pension fund in Sweden with 10%. We have a new investor that came in the transaction earlier this year called HBM, which is a renowned Swiss life science specialist fund. And we also have Handelsbanken funds, that is a renowned local investor here in the Nordics for life science particularly. So we have a very strong shareholder base here, and we're well capitalized with this recent rights issue we did. So next slide, please. So the problem of ulcerative colitis. This is a very debilitating disease, and there is still a lot to be done to help these patients live a normal life. It's caused by a chronic inflammation of the colon or the colonic mucosa that leads to ulcers. So it's an inflammatory bowel disease, together with Crohn's disease, that is maybe a bit more famous because it has a better name. But ulcerative colitis is as a big problem as Crohn's disease and inflammatory bowel disease. Ulcerative colitis comes in flares, so you have periods of active disease, and in between those you can have inactive periods where you're in remission. But when the patient is in a flare, they suffer from the typical symptoms of very frequent blood and mucus mixed diarrhea. You can also have stomach pain, you can have joint pain, and there are a number of other issues that they suffer from. Typically, the disease debuts between 20 and 30 years of age. These are fairly young patients, starting families, educating themselves, getting their first job. And this is very debilitating. So it's difficult to hold up a job or complete your studies. And of course, there is a stigma associated with the disease since it has to do with stools and blood and diarrhea and such. So it can make it challenging to meet someone and to uphold your social relations. So these patients typically suffer from a much lower quality of life than healthy individuals. The current treatments, and there are a few, particularly for the more difficult cases, moderate to severe ulcerative colitis. They help a fairly low share of the patients, and they are associated with severe side effects. So they're quite dangerous treatments. So there's definitely a need for new, safer, and effective treatments for this patient population. And here we have a quote from Felicia, 23 years old. There's an interview of her in our annual report, who really can testify to the difficulties of living with this disease. But if you move to the next slide, we come to cobitolimod, which is our solution to the problem. It's a first-in-class treatment with high market potential. We're developing this drug candidate as a potential new medicine for moderate to severe ulcerative colitis, so the more difficult cases that have failed treatments with other compounds. We recently reported positive phase 2b data that was also published in the Lancet Gastroenterology and Hepatology with good results then. And if you are familiar with drug development, you have in the clinical phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3. So before this phase 2b study, we have completed a number of clinical studies that support the efficacy and safety that we saw in phase 2b. So we have quite a bit of clinical data to support this program. And now we are starting phase 3. And what we've seen in our previous trials is that cobitolimod has a competitive efficacy, well in line with what's out there today and what's coming to market, but with a much superior safety profile. So we've had a completely clean safety profile to date in our clinical studies. Probably to some part explained by the way we give this drug. This is a local treatment. We give it rectally with a bottle like you have there, 50 milliliter solution, and then there is a lubricated tip, and then you give it rectally to yourself every third week. So it's very infrequent dosing. Also important in this field is that we have a novel mechanism of action, a new way of addressing the disease biologically, which is a differentiating factor when looking at the competitive landscape. So all in all, we see cobitolimod has a very large commercial potential given this outstanding combination of efficacy and safety, and we estimate that at peak sales we could reach more than $1 billion a year of sales with this compound. Next slide, please. So we are now starting phase 3, the last stage of development before one can apply for market approval. And the study design is based on the successful phase 2b. So same patient population, we give the drug the same way. We have the same way of measuring efficacy or effect. One difference is that in the previous study, the best dose was 250 milligrams, and we're definitely trying that again. But we're also in this phase 3 program testing an even higher dose, 500 milligrams. That could potentially increase the efficacy further. This is a fairly large program, 440 patients. We will do this at a couple of hundred clinics across the world in over 30 countries, so both the Americas, Europe, Asia, to get this done. And we have regulatory approval from the US FDA and also from the Swedish regulator to start the study, and also other countries are approved. These were the first two, but we also have other countries ongoing. And we now plan to start the patient recruitment. So clinics are now back from the summer. We also see there is less impact from the pandemic. So we are ready to start now. And then we expect it will take 18 to 24 months to complete the study and read out the data. So that was a fairly quick introduction to InDex Pharmaceuticals. A lot more to be said, of course. Please visit our website. If you move to the next slide, you have our website address there for those who want to.
Yes, please. I think we'll move to some questions now, Peter, because obviously that biotech companies for investors are, you have to, put some effort into understanding the business and how it will develop. So forgive my sort of more general questions here, because it will obviously be very important that I just looked it up actually. There's 20,000 patients in Denmark. Is that correct? So
Sounds reasonable. Yes,
yeah,
I haven't looked at
it's a
Denmark
big,
particularly, but there are 40,000 in Sweden, so
yeah.
20,000 in Denmark sounds reasonable.
So I guess the market is there. So what does your patients do today? So what's the alternative to your product?
Yes. First of all, when they're diagnosed, they're typically put on old anti-inflammatory treatments. We call them aminosalicylates and steroids. So these are the first line treatments, but a very large share of patients don't really respond well to these treatments. And that gets them to the more advanced treatments in the third line. So it's a step up approach here. And in there, you have biologics, so TNF alpha, Remicade, and Humira, the best-selling drugs in the world that you use for all sorts of inflammatory diseases. So these are also the best sellers here. Both of them sell for more than $1 billion in this indication. But we also have some more specific drugs. Takeda has a drug called vedolizumab, which sells for probably about $2 billion a year in ulcerative colitis. So there are several examples of very successful products here, but they help a fairly small share of the patients, or a very large share of patients actually do not get well on these, and they're associated with severe side effects. So there's been quite a bit of development here, and we have some more recent products that has come to market. But again, the safety profile of those is also challenging. And the most recent ones, the JAK inhibitors, the FDA just last month said that you're not allowed to use them until you've tried everything else, because they're associated with death, actually. But if you can't control the disease with these drugs, the end station for the patients is colectomy, that you surgically remove the whole colon and you're left with a stoma bag.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. So the $1 billion, let's just take that and perhaps segment it a bit. So let's say that everything works as you wish for, and it will be in 24 months. When do you expect to have first sales on this drug?
Yes, so the phase 3 program includes more studies than this initial induction study that we're doing. So it's actually 3 parts of the phase 3 program. So this study, we show that we can get people who are in an active flare and get them into remission. Then we have to show that we can keep them in remission. So in addition to this study, there is a maintenance study where we continue to treat patients for a year to see that we can keep them in remission. And there is also a second induction study, because typically you need 2 separate pivotal studies to be able to prove to the regulators that this really works. So it will be, we won't be done after this study, but with these results, we can optimize the remaining program. So we're still a bit away from market, but this is the study we're starting now is a very important step, and will get us very close to the market.
Yeah, and the phase 3, will you fund that? I mean, the money you just got in or raised from your equity issue, is that sufficient to take you through phase 3, or how do you see that?
So the money we raised is enough for this first part of the phase 3 program. So let's say half of the phase 3 program. So it's enough to pay for this first induction study with the 440 patients, and those patients that move into the maintenance study from that first study we've also financed. So you can say we've financed about half the phase 3 program, but importantly, we're financed until the next time we read out clinical data. So we can read out this first study and really see how well the drug works. And then if it works well, we assume it wouldn't be difficult to raise additional capital in one way or another.
But that's the normal way of raising capital within biotech, isn't it? I mean, this is standard practice as far
Yes,
as I know.
as soon as you have data,
You go to the next one.
you're out there.
There's a gentleman asking here, of course, you're referring to 440 patients. How many of those have already been enrolled by now?
No, so we haven't enrolled anybody yet. So
Okay,
we're
so
just
that's
about to enroll the first patient
Okay.
now. Yeah.
Okay. And those phase 3 will be across the world approximately. Is that a fair assumption?
Yes, a couple of hundred hospitals in more than 30 countries.
Okay.
So it's quite a project.
Yes, I can imagine. Perfect. Thank you very much. And the new shareholders you have received, they are well respected in Sweden. Have you? I mean, the holy grail in some of these companies are in the US. What are your sort of? Can you give us any sort of thoughts about the US market and how you plan to do this?
Well, so first of all, we did get the Swiss Life Science Fund, HBM,
Sure.
on board. So we have, it's not only Swedish, and we have some other Dutch and the London-based funds a bit further down in there. The problem for us with the US funds is that their minimum ticket is typically tens of millions of dollars.
Sure.
But they're also capped as to how much of a company they can own. And given our current market cap, we're just too small for the brand name US funds to really come in. So hopefully next round we will have a higher valuation, and they won't get many percent for their minimum tickets. The company.
That's a good plan. That sounds very interesting. Thank you very much, Peter, for giving us an introduction to your company. Thank you very much. I think we'll end it here. It was meant to be very short and precise, so that's how it works. Thank you very much.
Thank you.